All right, and we are live. All right, yeah. Set that real fast. There we go. Hello, hello. How goes it? Let me make sure that all of my stuff is set up correctly, and then we can get started right where I left off last night, which I decided how I want these tracked things to work, or at least the sort of paradigm I'm going to go with. Because I was stressing for a good bit about, how do I make sure all of these are initialized properly, because there's not really a way to get around, like, if you have a tracked object, there's not really a way to get around needing to, if you have a tree, individually initialize each member of your struct. Because a really simple way to fix this would be to still use the JSON paradigm, like have named members and have everything be dictionaries, and that would be super easy because you're using the same node type for everything. However, for like performance and mostly for ease of use of the class, I want each member to be an actual member of a struct, which means now I manually, for each one of those members of the struct, initializing and also initializing and changing, or not initializing and registering them with their parent manually, which is a hard problem to solve if you don't want it to be manual, or you want to enforce that you don't forget them, because it's a situation where I might forget them. So let's see how long it takes the stream bot to figure out that I am in fact streaming, or if it does, and if the role ping works this time, because I should be live on Twitch as well, and the bot should be able to tell that anytime now. There it is. Did it ping the right role? It did. Yippee. I have a functioning automatic notification system. So the way that I want this tracked value system thing to work is make it so that we have a common tracked type, and this is going to be our interface of like defining all the methods that are used between nodes of these tracked objects to communicate. And then I also want to have a sort of a template to make stuff easier. And what this will do is it will hold the T. Can I put a requires? No. And this tract will... Is there a way to static assert? Okay, so only work for specializations of a class? Oh, this is like claiming that you have to have specializations. But it looks like you can just throw a static assert into the main body. Hello, audio. How goes it? And hello, Zeltra, as well. What is Womp Womp? Everything is going well so far. What is Womp Womp? I'm just at the start of my career. I can't fall off yet. Right? Right? We're going to static assert that. Hi, I'm doing pretty good as well. I'm feeling confident about the technical direction. I wish I have been... I wish that I was moving a little bit faster than I have been, but you're just in the shadow realm. True though. I did wish I was moving a little bit faster. We have like, I guess, roughly 2.5 weeks left. And we're still on kind of the refactors phase. But this is all stuff that needs to get done on the engine, so I'm not too mad about it. I just hope we still make the deadline. I'm gonna have to be coding even while I'm at AWE. Not AWE. I keep saying AWE. It's CS. It's CES. Computer Electronics Exchange. Let's see that. I want to do is base of. Let's actually put tracked type above tracked. And then if I remember correctly, which I don't at all, that's how you say T has track type as a base type. Welcome to the Shadow Realm, Jimbo. No! No, I know my content's not shadow banned. It's just banned. Don't worry. I'm keeping the addiction in check right now. Where I'm not going to queue 5 League games today. Not today. Maybe on like my week off, but not today. Not today. Wasn't worth it. Lost all the games. Of course, it was not my fault. It was Jungle's fault. Actually, no, I was playing Jungle. Let's see. Base of A, B. B is... Okay, so it is base type and then the derived type. It's the matrix, not the shadow realm. No, we're trying to get to the matrix. We're in the shadow realm right now, and we want to be in the matrix. That's how it's going. Or that's what's going on. I don't know. I was doing decent. I'm not like about to bring up my OPPG on stream, but for the most part, I was the person feeding the least. So, I mean, I don't know. I have been steadily improving. So that's all I'm really worried about. I'm not a it's my team's fault sort of person. I'm very much a what can I do to improve? But sometimes, I mean, like, it's 5-person teams, and the way to win is to, you're like 1/5 of the entire game. So you can only win 20% of the time because of what you do. You can definitely lose more than that because of what you do. It's just, yeah. So, what tracked requires is... So my scheme is this. I want to force tracked to always be initialized. However, for this entire system to work, each tracked value needs to be contained within a shared pointer. What this means is that... Actually, we can put enable shared from this onto tracked type, maybe? Or I can leave that up to implementation. We'll just put that there. Or... No, I want to make sure that this is enforced, that is always there, and that gives us a common way to handle that. So the way that we can handle this is to make sure this shared pointer is always initialized. The creator of this must always pass in the default value, as well as an option a optional parent for this node. Never played LOL, so you're the real winner? Indeed you are. I stayed away for it for a while because I'm like, you know what? I can tell that this is the sort of game that I would really enjoy, so I'm gonna stay away from it. And then I played it and I'm like, oh crap, this is the sort of game I really enjoy. Hot take, I enjoy League. It's crazy that that is actually a hot take. Objectively fun game. We're going to say value is equal to... It's all fun and games, literally. Yep. So we're going to make shared default value. Yeah, how's it going? I hope it is of use. Pass in the default value. It's going to pass in the parent. Oof. That can't be fun. It's going alright. It's definitely a lot more low level than OpenGL. Yeah, OpenGL is kind of like, yeah, we have all of the default settings and pipeline set up for you already. You're basically connect us to a window manager and tell us what to display on screen. And then Vulkan's like, But no, what about what virtual graphics driver are you using? What physical device are you using? Exactly how do you want this pipeline to run? You must consider all of these things before you even show a singular pixel on screen. And then once you get done with all of that, then it's much smoother sailing. But you still do have to learn how basically all of the graphic system works. Probably perfectionism. Every game had to be sweaty game. Yeah, honestly, the part of League I like is that it, like, you can train perfectionism in that game. However, it's like very hard. I'm not good at it though. Like, let me be clear, I am not good at that game. I play it purely because it's fun. I have almost escaped bronze. Almost. We'll see. I got to bronze 1 very recently, and then I have dropped down again to 2. Every time I almost get out of bronze, it's like, nope, you're gonna have multiple bad games. And that is how it always goes, because probabilities, of course. It's probabilities. Loser's queue isn't real. Mostly. Then... yeah, and then that needs a weak pointer to a parent. So we need a... say, do you just cast it to weak pointer? Yeah, you just cast it and you're good. So we're gonna do parent map from, or map to a trying to understand map reduce right now. Well, map reduce is fun. Love functional iterator stuff. If you need help figuring it out, I would say look at Rust documentation on those sorts of things. They're usually super. That's like one of the cleanest language implementations I've seen of functional programming concepts. Where is the music coming from? It is coming from a web browser off screen. So, this one. I have the channel linked. That the channels that I play music from, I have those linked in just descriptions. Yep. Indeed, that's because it's on a different screen. Because it's part of the streaming control center screen, where I have all of the off-screen things. So this needs to be a weak pointer to tracked type. Nope. And then this should be able to figure out what the arguments are. though it's been having trouble in the past. At least in template declarations. So that should map the option to another option. I don't have the craziness going on here that I do have with results. So this should be more reliable, I guess. Theoretically, we'll see when we actually instantiate it how well it does. And that's the main thing we need to do. Just make sure that this shared pointer is definitely always initialized. And then we also want to make sure that we can access all of the we'll make sure we can access all of the members. So we're going to do a T reference operator and we'll also do a const version of this. And that should allow us to access the inner value of that pretty easily. And this error operator should double in, like, should allow us to directly access what's pointed to by this shared pointer. Is there anything I can do to make this anything more than a simple wrapper class? Because at the moment it's just a wrapper class, but not essential. And I want to make it essential to force myself to always use it. The retract object here. We're going to have this be a public tract type. And on change is just going to be called whenever one of this object's members gets changed. Tract object. We'll do the same. We don't need an initial value. Guess I'm just not awake today. But I will throw this constructor in here. Depends. If I work fast enough, it will be like there's 21 days left. It is the 23rd, right? That the event is happening? Yeah, 23rd. And I do lose a couple days to conferences, or the singular conference, but '22 is when registration in person happens. I fly in on the 23rd, I think. Yeah. They let you register or get a badge the day before, but they'll still let you in after that. Oh, come on. Stop randomly clicking. There we go. The headset wants me to ban people. It clicks without my permission. Actually, this does need to be defined outside of this class. Here I actually need to add editor action type to the list of to the list of things. Oh. He's too brain rotted. We gotta put him down. Mods, put him down. If I had mods, that's what I would say. And I don't want this to be editor action. Plot twist, the mods are brain rotted too. They are going to be. There is no avoiding that. So what I'll do, I'll make it so that when we set things, you just manually call the editor action. You just say forward. Oh. And I've been up for a while. Why am I yawning so much? I need some pseudoscience. Why am I yawning so much? Currently, we are working on a state system that will work with an undo system. So I'm trying to figure out how to make native C++ style objects that will be able to mirror the JSON structures I have for editor assets, but also be used. But they can also be used as the way to store the state of the editor as well. So that, you know how in Blender when you control Z, it like goes through different selections and all the different actions you've done rather than just the actual changes you've made? I want Brane Engine to work similar to that. So I'm trying to make the state of the engines going to be stored through these objects that store their own state. So every input you do affects the state of the engine, and then that state change is applied through the undo system. I'm gonna put the hood on because right now it's just like that looks a lot cooler. I always like forget to put the hood on, but the hood is like an essential part of like not being my tiny head. So we have that listener, and I also need to implement child changed. So we can make this public. And what I'll actually do is make this an option for a shared pointer. That way all the locking can happen on the back end, and then we just do option and then get the shared pointer if it exists. but we'll put it underneath the constructor. And we will override child changed. Oh. I think it's only references that really need to be set in the constructor right away. Could be wrong. Anything else that I need to implement here? Yes. I knew I gave them prefix. Oh, so it is just Brane assert. Okay. But these weren't working for some reason. And then in here, This is a parent, or has a parent. We want to call child changed on the parent. And we actually do want to propagate what type of editor event changed it. Editor action type. And then tracked value also needs to implement from, or inherit from, tracked type. And that will override that. And then here, when we call child changed, we need to pass in the type. So that that's propagated properly. And here for tracked object, must explicitly initialize base class. Good. Should just be parent, right? Yeah. It's an option weak pointer. I'm going to create a new option method called OR. None. We will actually Here we will return we'll forward the value. Forward is the better option. I think I just came across forward yesterday when I was doing research, and it looks like a better option than move in a lot of cases. In that case, we do want move, I think, though. Nah, move works. Why is this being the way that it is? Is or a, like... Looks like or might be a reserved or default. Call it value or default. Here we will return option type V. Actually, no, we'll just return move value. And here, you can do map this to a weak pointer. And then after we've mapped this, you can say value or default. Bots attack. Oh, bots are attacking. Here, 1 second. Is gone. The bots have been vanquished. Value or default, and the default that we will pass in is just a weak pointer. Empty weak pointer. This isn't C++ magic. This is me attempting to use Rust type paradigms in C++, and therefore this is like Rust day to day in C++ using C++ magic. This over here on the left, that is the C++. magic or corruption. Then again, C++ is already pretty corrupted, so yeah. Need this to be... That's just casting the option. The formatter has no clue what to do with that. It's like, okay, we'll new line it, try to make it smaller. I don't know what to do here. I might end up making it so that we always new line lambdas or closures or whatever you want to call them. C++ contains every other language somewhere inside it if you use it wrong enough. True. Unfortunately true. Let's see, and... do we want to subscribe to our own on-change event? No. No. Then here, so you're trying to use C++ as if it was Rust? Somewhat. I'm a fan of how error checking works in Rust. So I'm handling error checking in like that same result-esque way. Because I just hate try-catch statements. They're just very unwieldy and unergonomic to work with, so I'm avoiding ever using them if possible. That's the main thing. Why is this complaining about override? That's right, I don't need to specify override in the actual implementation. Then if a child is changed, we also want to call on change. Not add listener, we want invoke. And then in here, can't use it outside because of the try catch block is its own. Yeah. And call back. Yep. Add listener F. Type constant. Wait, what? Did I make add listener a constant function? I did. Why did I do that? Was it because... well, it doesn't need to be constant. I mean, the general, like, consensus is avoid try-catch in all circumstances, unless, like, you absolutely need to. Like, you're validating user input, and the only way to get stuff back from that, well, the only way to error check things is try-catches. So it's unavoidable in some instances. Temporary type handle. What? Has a private destructor. Huh. Apparently I forgot to make the destructor of handle public. Ah, I did. Yeah. I'm gonna say... I'm going to delete the copy constructor on this, since I don't want us accidentally removing the listener. And then we're going to define a move constructor. And we'll do ID is equal to old.id. And then we'll say old ID is equal to throw away legal argument exceptions to enforce null safety. We could. Or we could not. Let's see. There's a C++ way to get type maxes from the standard library. Because like there's int max, there's like the defines. Numeric limits, that's what I'm looking for. Numeric limits event handle ID max. Is it a function? Unsigned long from incompatible type unsigned long. There we go. It is a function. Then here we'll just do if old ID is not equal to literal highest value of a size type, which should be impossible to get to because the program will crash long before that. That way, old handles getting cleaned up after they've been moved won't cause those issues. And this should be implicitly moved. Not throwing in errors, so I think it's being implicitly moved. And then... I think that's all we need for base tracked object. We have add listener, a way to propagate events. Let's consult the diagram. What do we need? Ways to propagate events. And ways to subscribe to those events. I think the diagram is satisfied. And now I get to work on, potentially, if all of this magically works on the first time, which it won't. We get to figure out how to implement this into editor asset. Which means... Here, Discord ping is calling to me. Who speaks? Okay. Which asset type do we want to do first? I don't necessarily want to deal with assembly assets first. Assembly assets are going to be... That means we should do assembly assets first. Because they're the ones that I'm dreading the most, so that logically follows that those are the ones that I should implement first. I think... Oh, I did already put this as a... Yeah. Do want this as a tracked object. So editor asset now must be a tracked object. The editor asset... Oh, I was not clicking anything. Not a small refactor. No. I've been on this for several days. Then when we actually... I had this magical moment one time when factoring out network serialization from state serialization, where it worked on the first try. Nice. Yeah, so open unknown asset is where we will actually be doing all of this. I wonder if I just comment out see, we're gonna say if change delta squirrel if change delta is equal to 0 and change version is equal to save version. This actually needs to be the inverse of that. So this will be our new indication of if we have unsaved changes or not. And then editor asset load. What does load do? That attempts to load it from a file? And if we try to load it and the file doesn't exist, it creates the file? A number of times, and that number is real. Okay, yeah. No, don't like that. Why? Tried to save file that did not load correctly. Why did I fully load it in the first place? What? Why load it at all? And I don't even know what hash was doing. So, wait, might make sense to have a refresh function that, like, refreshes it off of disk. But that would be a... like, a virtual type. So I'm gonna have refresh be virtual. I'm just not gonna have refresh there for now. When we get around to making it so stuff refreshes, because I don't think we even detect file system changes of actual files. And I don't want load. Definitely don't want load implicitly creating files. And data. Yeah, we just don't have data as a default member. How does one even hook into file system changes? There's OS level specific things where you can ask it to give you events on, like, when files are written in certain areas. So, like, so yeah, there's, like, obtaining directory change notifications. Or there's probably... yeah, and there's probably a more open source, like, cross-platform thing. Like, here's a GitHub project with a fair amount of support. Don't worry, I'm trying to find it more cross-platform. So it's on Conan and VC package. Which, are there similar? Of course, there's Boost file system. I've heard Boost bad, though. This is a JavaScript project. That's the first result. C would be fine. libfam. But that's Unix. Sounds like a good guy suggests a different language. This isn't a very popular project, so we'll probably go with this for the file system watcher. Because I have my own custom file system watcher, but the only time, like, I have to manually pull for change events, like manually call, check for changes, and it doesn't actually hook into any APIs. Or is this would hook into update? Yeah, this is asynchronous, so this would hook up into updates. Was the person suggesting a whole different language, saying to rewrite in Rust? No, he was saying rewrite it in Go. The Gopher language. The Google Gopher language. Not the glorious Crablang. What was I doing? Right, I was... Are you sure this isn't polling behind the scenes? It might be. However, if we click it through here, platform, Windows, so there is some threading, but if we go in here, well, info's from path. For some reason we're using a custom thread implementation? Or it's just doing Windows specific. I'm not seeing any Windows specific stuff in here, aside from this being cast to a handle. Watcher generic. The watcher generic probably checks for changes, but this FS events, that sounds like file system events. So I'm going to really quickly I just need the name of... Oh, I'm not clicking. Find first change. So read directory changes. Retrieves information that describe the changes within the specified directory. The function does not report changes. So we... I think this was the function that was getting called. I just thought it was like a generic file iterator. If we search for this, yep, they are using events. So that's the Windows API event thing. So there's like your filter, the buffer to watch with, watch recursive. Yeah. So this is using events. Can confirm. I do not want to have to figure out how to use that function manually, though. I've dealt with the Win32 API for screen grabbing before, and it was an experience. Because I didn't figure out the correct API to use, so I implemented it with 3 different APIs. I know I could use a minimal header, but like, right now I'm just not even implementing it. And also, I do not want to use the Win32 API because it sucks. So I will let other people do that. That other library looked very minimalistic though. And it's like a file system watcher. So, yeah. Do not want to mess with it if I can avoid it. So this is complaining because this must initialize the base class for tracked object. Which we will just pass in a none object into because editor assets will never have a parent tracked object. So we can just deal with that. But yeah. I do enjoy a little bit of the challenge of figuring out the Win32 API, but that's probably more of like a personal project thing to do. And while this is a personal project, it is I'm in the process of trying to make this less of a personal project and more of an actual legitimate project. So I should probably stop doing personal project things with it, like custom implementing very standard things like file system watchers, and leave my brain power for the less well implemented things like how do I handle editor state, which again is something that people have tried and failed to set up many times. However, it is something that does take a bit of work. Guess that would be needed. The problem I'm currently considering is how to handle parsing from JSON. Streaming right now. Second. Streaming audio. Stay right there. To lock the door so the little siblings are wandering in. Okay. So the problem is I want an initial value on each of these and then every subsequent change to these values to be part of file. So I guess well, what do I need for a standard editor asset? Actually, what constitutes an editor asset? That is a good question. Like, what is an asset? In the runtime, assets are, so you have the runtime. I'm not going to mouse that. So in the runtime, we have each loadable thing from the server is an asset. So, like, mesh. Like a single mesh without submeshes. And then, like, a material. That is an asset. And a shader, a singular shader that can be used in a material. And an image is also. And then, as recursive as they are, assemblies are also individual assets. So those are how assets are defined in the runtime. But in the editor, I have stuff like GLTF. And from this GLTF spawns multiple, like this spawns possibly images. This spawns possibly not default shaders, but the GLTF spawns materials, because GLTFs can define materials. And then GLTF also spawns multiple meshes. So this is like a source file. And then we have the only editor native asset at the moment are assemblies and materials. So that kind of splits into two things. We have asset sources and asset metadata. And I see it as one metadata file to one asset sources file. And this, they kind of combine together as one like unit of thing that you interact with in the editor. And then this can branch out again into multiple assets. In the case of GLTF. But when we're dealing with, and the way that Unity handles this, since Unity is the thing I'm familiar with, is if you want to be able to configure the materials from a GLTF, for instance, you would extract those materials from the actual asset, and then those would now be an extra set of assets within your editor. And be distinct within the file system. But I don't think Unity doesn't have the thing that I'm currently doing where each submesh gets turned into its own individual asset. Instead, they would have, probably on the back end, it is just one mesh. Or is it? No, they are separate meshes. But they're like, in the file system you can expand it out and it looks like a prefab or a pack of assets. So maybe on the editor side, what I need to do is split up the representation of the thing. So when you click on an asset, it goes, here are the contained, or when you click on a source, we're going to say when you click on a source. You can then interact with the metadata about that source. Yeah, I'm just thinking about how it how it describes it behind the scenes. Like, how does it actually store it? Because that's what I'm trying to refactor right now, is also the asset system. And whether editor asset remains its own singular class, or if I create an editor asset source and an editor asset metadata class that are separate. Editor going to be able to directly edit the GLTFs then? No. But it will be able to set metadata about them, or extract assets from it, and then you're able to extract those, like, extract assets from it and then edit those assets. Like, extract a material and then edit that material, or extract an image and then edit that image. I was not clicking there. Now, right now I'm conceptually struggling with how to handle the metadata for sources versus metadata for contained assets. And all of that stuff. Thought the materials could be inside the GLTF. So are you extracting them in a read-only way? Yeah, so the idea is that if you want to edit the material inside of a GLTF, you would have to copy it out of the GLTF so that it now exists within the editor's file system, and then we edit that instead of the material actually in the GLTF. So whenever I say extract, that's the process that I'm talking about. But there's still potential metadata on, like, meshes, and I don't think it makes sense to extract meshes from a GLTF, like a larger file type ever. So let's say for example you have animations in a GLTF, and obviously we don't really have a way to edit animations in Brane Engine, and aren't going to for a while, so it doesn't make sense to extract that from the asset. However, you still would want to set things about those animations on the asset, and those animations are probably a separate asset type. So how do I handle... I'm trying to figure... I'm like designing the UI in my head, but also the representation that supports that UI, and messing with it. No, I'm not We're treating the GLTF as immutable. The source is immutable. Unless, if it's, okay, so if it's an external asset type, like a GLTF, or an FBX, or a PNG, it's immutable. However, if it's an editor native type, like a material, then it is mutable. So if you extract something, you'd be extracting it into an editor native file, which is then mutable. However, the whole like the asset source is immutable, but the asset metadata is mutable. So if we have an animation in a mesh, you'd be editing the animation or editing the import settings for the animation through the metadata, is what I'm thinking right now. Unless I want to come up with something super crazy like a diffing system. So if you change an asset source, it gets carried over to derived in-editor assets, but that is not the direction that I want to go. And the main thing I'm struggling with is, well, one of the things I'm struggling with is, well, I can just write these down since I'm going to be here until I figure this out. See, here was me, like, debating it again. Asset representations. So I have a couple questions that I need to solve. Where is the line between meta file and editor native source asset? For example, materials. How do we handle the UI for assets for source assets that contain multiple runtime assets? How are the assets loaded into the version diff state system? That's more of an implementation detail. How are they serialized back? If we solve these two, they're kind of like the same thing. So this is like, once I figure out these two, this will be easy. Does one and I think the answer to does one so one meta file handle metadata for multiple output assets? Yes. Where's the line between meta file and editor native source asset? See, it's very easy to say, in the case of external source, external asset types, such as images and GLTF, metadata stores the ID of the exported assets and asset specific import settings. Specifically import settings. I think this import settings is an important part of the puzzle. It's not regular settings, it's import settings. So you can't actually change anything about the asset, you can just change how it's imported. In the case of editor native assets, what is stored in editor native assets? Like material. Well, obviously, materials and assemblies, it makes sense to store the bulk of the asset data in the source file, in the actual source file. Case of editor native assets, the bulk of data is in the source file. And then I guess it's still, you have to go with you have to stay consistent in the way you're doing stuff. So it would be the import, it would just then the metadata file stores the asset's ID. Okay, that clears it up for me. I can work with this. And we could also do things like if an editor native asset, like for example a shader, has multiple, if we define something like a compile definition system or preprocessor where you can define multiple shaders in one singular file, then those shaders can be split into separate distinct units after the fact. So I think it makes sense to, instead of doing overrides for editor asset, I don't like the override inheritance for editor asset right now, because I think editor assets, an editor asset describes asset is a source metadata pair. That can be baked into one or more runtime assets. Just gonna throw that in there. So now we have our definition of this. A metadata data file is a list of assets contained within the source asset, and each metadata block contains an asset ID, which it's not even contains the metadata. It's I'm going to say it's a dictionary of assets contained within the source asset. The key is each key is an ID of an asset contained within the source file. The block contains an asset specific way to match the relevant part of the source file to this block of metadata. And then contains import settings. Contains import and export settings. Mostly import settings, I would think. Yeah, we're gonna call it import settings. So with all of that, I do think editor asset is a tracked object. However, instead of asset type, and name and all of those things, I think these... Ooh, that is a question. Is when we're reporting asset changes, do we want to report if it's a forward change or a backwards change? Like an undo? That way if we're recording a change delta, in any case, we don't store an ID for this asset anymore. That doesn't make any sense at all. This file system path, file path is the path to the source asset and to that's our source path. Then do I want to do a variant here for what type of asset is contained within here? I think I do. So we have a variant that is source. And then we have editor asset metadata. Or we can just say asset metadata. We'll call it asset source and asset metadata. And asset metadata here will be public so it'll be a public tracked object with an asset or actually have this be an ordered map. Of asset ID to asset metadata. Or actually, I need to create a tracked map option or tracked dictionary. So we have our sources in there. And sources won't ever change. Like, the type of the source won't change, so I don't think this variant needs to be like a tracked variant type, since that shouldn't ever change. Metadata, however, that can change on reloads and stuff. So this needs to be changeable. Or, well, it would only, well, could it? Could it be changed from the editor side? Like, would you ever add a new asset? I only think these get added if you change the source file itself. And in the case of editor native assets like materials, those only really get created by actions that you would do to either this, yeah, it's all, you would never directly change this. It would have the side effect of change after reloads and stuff. So that doesn't need to actually be a tracked dictionary for now. And then the asset metadata. We would have a tracked value of type asset ID, which we'll just change this by value for now. It won't be very efficient, but let's actually have this be a struct, if we can. Can structs inherit from classes? Looks like they can. All a struct is different. Yeah, except for their default behavior with access. So we would have a tracked asset ID, and the ID will always be there. And then we'll have asset import settings. And then we'll have a do I want this struct here to be overwritable? Or do I want something within it to be overwritable? Yep, I am pretty much self-taught. I did do 2 years of college, but I already knew how to code before then. Most of my college stuff was like, oh, so this is how people are supposed to do this thing. I see. This is super useful. And then I dropped out because I was sleeping through the classes. And then did several startups, which is fun. Now I'm kind of locked into doing startups. So for each one of these variant options, I have a tracked asset source. Asset source. Ah, you're correct. It depends. How much do you care about how heavy your wallet is? If you do care about that at all, startups are not the place to be. They are not a good place for stability. So, I think... I kind of want to standard variant this too. Rust has entirely remapped my brain. And the main reason I like variants over inheritance is if I have other systems that I want interacting with this system, but I don't want to, for example, UI. If I want to have UI working on this metadata, if I had like several inherited classes from asset source and asset metadata, the problem that I run into is that UI can't figure out what type asset metadata is unless I create an entirely separate system for specifically telling the UI what type of metadata this is, either with a manually managed enumerator, and then we have a getter method for that enumerator, and I have to make sure every single asset type has a function that returns the correct enumerator type. Or I put the UI function on the asset itself, which is like, I don't want that. I want it to be modularized. Or I could come up with, or I could use variant and my bootleg match thing. So it's like a case statement, which is super easy to implement, and I don't have to manage that basically at all. So now the next step is going through the next step would be go through each one of these different editor things here and manually implement them. which I guess is what I'm going to do next. So, I'm feeling pretty low energy right now, so I think I'm gonna switch to doing this off stream instead, so I don't bore people or don't lose focus while on stream. I feel like this is an off stream task, so I'm gonna end the stream a little bit early. I also do need to gonna be traveling soon, so I need to prepare for that as well. So thank you to those of you who stuck around. It was it's always nice to actually have people in chat to talk to, so thank you. Yeah, till next